You know him. He's 32, still talks about his startup idea from college, borrows money from his girlfriend to pay rent, promises he'll get serious next month, but next month never comes. Or maybe he's your friend who can't show up to anything on time, cancels plans last minute but somehow expects everyone to wait for him. Always. Or maybe it's you. Here's the truth. Nobody wants to say out loud. You're not free. You're a coward. That spontaneous lifestyle, that refusal to commit, that endless search for your passion, it's not freedom, it's terror disguised as choice. You're so afraid of failing at something real that you've chosen to fail at everything instead. Carl Jung had a name for this: Puer Aeternus, the eternal boy, the man who lives as if he has forever to figure it out, while his life bleeds away one, maybe tomorrow at a time. And the people who love you, they're exhausted. They're done making excuses for you. They're done believing your promises. Some of them have already given up on you. They just haven't told you yet. You feel it, don't you? That hollow ache in your chest when you wake up and realize another day has passed and you're still exactly where you were yesterday. Still waiting for life to begin, while everyone else is actually living theirs. You're betraying yourself every single day. And if you don't stop, if you don't face what I'm about to show you, you're going to wake up at 50 with nothing but regrets and a list of people who used to believe in you. This video will destroy every excuse you've been hiding behind. Watch it. Or keep lying to yourself. Your choice. So who is this man, really? Picture him at a coffee shop in Brooklyn, 34 years old, MacBook covered in stickers from bands you've never heard of. He's been working on his novel for 6 years. He orders the most complicated drink on the menu, flirts with the barista who's clearly not interested, then spends 3 hours scrolling Instagram instead of writing. He's charming. God, is he charming. He can walk into any room and within minutes have people laughing, feeling like they're part of something special. He talks about traveling to Thailand, starting a podcast, learning guitar. His eyes light up when he describes his dreams. And for a moment, you believe them too. But watch closer. Notice how he never finishes anything. That screenplay he's been writing, still on page 12. The business he was going to start with his college roommate, they had one meeting 6 months ago. The girl he was totally going to ask out, he's been saying that for 2 years. Carl Jung identified this pattern over a century ago. The Puer Aeternus, literally eternal boy, the man who remains psychologically adolescent well into adulthood. Jung saw how these men live in a perpetual state of potential, always becoming, never being. Here's what makes him so magnetic. He represents pure possibility. When you're around him, you remember what it felt like to believe anything was achievable. He hasn't been crushed by mortgages and performance reviews and the slow grind of adult responsibility. He still has that spark. But here's what makes him so dangerous. He's addicted to that potential. The moment something becomes real, requires commitment, sacrifice, showing up consistently, he finds a reason to run. Not dramatically, quietly. He just fades. His apartment is a museum of abandoned projects, guitar with 2 broken strings, canvases with half-finished paintings, books he swore would change his life, bookmarked on chapter 3. Each item a ghost of who he almost became. And the people in his life? They're caught in this strange dance of hope and frustration. They see his gifts. They want to believe this time will be different. But deep down, they're starting to realize something he refuses to face. He's not preparing to live. He's preparing to keep preparing. And this leads us to something much darker than simple procrastination. Something much darker than simple procrastination is happening here. This isn't laziness. This isn't even fear of failure. This is a complete rejection of reality itself. Jung understood that the Puer Aeternus lives in what he called provisional life, always preparing for the real thing to begin, but never allowing it to actually start. It's like he's stuck in an eternal dress rehearsal, convinced that somewhere out there is the perfect moment, the perfect opportunity, the perfect version of himself that will finally be worthy of commitment. But here's what's really happening in his psyche. He's addicted to the fantasy of unlimited potential. In his mind, he could be anything: a successful entrepreneur, a best-selling author, a world traveler, a spiritual guru. As long as he never actually tries, he never has to face the brutal truth that he might be ordinary. Think about your friend who's been about to apply to grad school for 3 years. Every conversation he talks about it like it's happening next semester. He's researched programs, downloaded applications, even visited campuses, but he never submits anything. Because the moment he applies, he moves from the realm of infinite possibility into the realm of actual results, and results can disappoint. Søren Kierkegaard wrote about this existential anxiety, the dizzying freedom of choice that paralyzes rather than liberates. The Puer feels this constantly. Every decision feels like a death sentence to all the other selves he could become. So he chooses nothing. Or rather, he chooses the illusion of choice. Watch him at a restaurant. He'll study the menu for 15 minutes, ask the server 3 questions, then order the same thing he always gets. This isn't about food. It's about his relationship with commitment itself. Even choosing an entree feels like closing doors. His relationships follow the same pattern. He'll date someone for months, maybe years, talking about the future in vague terms. Someday we'll travel together. Eventually I'll be ready to settle down. But someday never comes, because someday would require him to stop being the eternal boy and become an actual man. And here's where it gets truly insidious. He's convinced himself this is freedom. He looks at his married friends, his friends with careers and mortgages, and feels sorry for them. They've given up, he thinks. They've settled. But the truth is exactly the opposite. They've chosen to live. He's chosen to hide. And this hiding is creating something toxic that's about to poison everything he touches. This hiding is creating something toxic that's about to poison everything he touches. Because beneath all that charm, all that potential, all that boyish enthusiasm, something dark is growing. Jung called it the shadow, the parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. And the Puer's shadow is particularly vicious because it's wrapped in such beautiful packaging. Here's what nobody sees: the subtle cruelty of his self-sabotage. He'll get excited about a project, get you excited about it too, then disappear when the real work begins. Not dramatically. He's too sophisticated for that. He'll just become busy with something else, suddenly unreachable. The project dies quietly, and somehow you're left feeling like maybe you weren't supportive enough. Watch him in relationships. He'll pursue someone intensely, make them feel like they're the center of his universe, then slowly start pulling back the moment they want something real. He doesn't break up with them. That would require a difficult conversation. Instead, he becomes emotionally unavailable, forgets important dates, shows up late, makes them feel crazy for wanting consistency. Brené Brown talks about how we betray ourselves when we abandon our own values to avoid discomfort. The Puer has mastered this art. He'll promise to help you move, then text an hour before that he's not feeling well. He'll commit to being your business partner, then ghost when it's time to sign papers. He'll say he loves you, then act like love is a burden he never asked for. But here's the most insidious part. He genuinely believes he's the victim in these situations. In his mind, everyone else is trying to trap him, control him, kill his spirit. His girlfriend wanting to know where the relationship is going. She's being clingy. His business partner wanting him to show up consistently. They don't understand his creative process. His parents asking when he'll get a real job. They're just bitter people who gave up on their dreams. He's rewritten the narrative so completely that he can't see the trail of disappointment he leaves behind. Every broken promise, every abandoned commitment, every person who stopped believing in him. It's all evidence of how the world doesn't appreciate his unique gifts. This is emotional childhood, disguised as spiritual enlightenment. This is selfishness wrapped in the language of authenticity. And the people who love him are starting to pay a price that's becoming impossible to ignore. The people who love him are starting to pay a price that's becoming impossible to ignore. And the worst part? He's convinced it's their fault. Meet Sarah. She's been dating him for 2 years. In the beginning, she felt like she'd found her soulmate, someone who saw life as an adventure, who wasn't trapped by conventional expectations. But now she lies awake at 2 a.m., wondering if she's losing her mind. He says he loves her, but he won't introduce her to his family. He talks about moving in together someday, but someday keeps getting pushed back. When she brings up the future, he accuses her of being controlling. "Why can't you just enjoy what we have?" he says, making her feel guilty for wanting something real. Carl Rogers wrote about incongruence, the gap between who we say we are and how we actually behave. The Puer lives in this gap constantly, and it drives the people around him insane. They can feel the disconnect, but he's so good at making them question their own perceptions. His parents have stopped asking about his career. They've learned that every conversation becomes a lecture about how they don't understand his path. His father, who worked 2 jobs to put him through college, gets told he's trapped in the system. His mother, who still sends him money when rent is due, gets accused of being emotionally manipulative when she suggests maybe it's time to get serious about something. His friends are exhausted. They've heard about his breakthrough idea so many times they've stopped pretending to be excited. They've covered for him at dinner parties, made excuses for why he's not there, watched him charm new people with the same stories about his potential while they know the truth. But here's what's really happening. He's not just avoiding commitment to projects or relationships. He's avoiding commitment to growth itself. Every person who challenges him, who asks him to be accountable, who wants him to show up consistently, they become the enemy. John Bowlby's attachment theory shows us how early relationships shape our ability to connect. The Puer has learned that love means being accepted without conditions, without expectations, without having to change or grow. Anyone who asks for more gets labeled as someone who doesn't really love him. So he surrounds himself with people who enable his emotional childhood and pushes away anyone who might help him become a man. And this pattern always leads back to the same source, a bond so deep and so toxic that it's strangling his soul. This pattern always leads back to the same source, a bond so deep and so toxic that it's strangling his soul, and it might not be who you think it is. Jung wrote about the devouring mother, not necessarily the biological mother, but any figure who keeps a man in perpetual childhood by making his survival dependent on remaining helpless. Sometimes it's mom. Sometimes it's grandma who raised him. Sometimes it's the girlfriend who pays his bills while he finds himself. But here's what's really insidious. This isn't always obvious abuse. Often it looks like love. Picture the mother who still does his laundry at 35 because he's so busy with his art. The grandmother who slips him cash because he's too sensitive for the corporate world. The girlfriend who covers rent because he just needs time to get his business off the ground. They think they're helping. They think they're protecting his gifts, his creativity, his beautiful soul from a harsh world that doesn't understand. But what they're actually doing is enabling his emotional paralysis. Donald Winnicott identified the difference between the true self and the false self. The Puer's true self, his authentic adult potential, has been buried under layers of protection that have become a prison. He's learned that being helpless gets him taken care of. Being vulnerable gets him rescued. Being too sensitive for adult responsibility gets him excused from having to grow up. John Bowlby's attachment research shows us how this creates an insecure bond that follows him into every relationship. He seeks partners who will mother him, then resents them for it. He wants to be taken care of, then feels suffocated by the care. He craves unconditional love, then sabotages it, because deep down, he knows he hasn't earned it. The devouring mother doesn't have to be female. It can be the wealthy father who keeps bailing him out of financial trouble, the friend who always covers for him, the boss who makes excuses for his inconsistency because he's so talented. Gabor Mate talks about how trauma isn't just what happens to us, but what doesn't happen. The Puer experienced the trauma of never being allowed to fail, never being forced to face consequences, never being trusted to handle his own life. And here's the brutal truth. Part of him knows this. Part of him feels the suffocation, the infantilization, the slow death of his potential. But breaking free would mean facing something that terrifies him more than staying trapped. It would mean letting the boy die so the man can finally be born. It would mean letting the boy die so the man can finally be born. And this is where most Puers face their moment of truth, the collapse that either destroys them or saves them. It usually happens around 40, sometimes earlier if life forces his hand. The fantasy finally cracks under the weight of reality. Maybe it's his girlfriend of 5 years who finally leaves, taking her financial support with her. Maybe it's his parents who stop enabling him after his father has a heart attack and realizes he won't be around forever to clean up the mess. Maybe it's the moment he looks around his studio apartment and realizes his 25-year-old co-workers are getting promoted while he's still talking about his big break. The collapse feels like death because, in a way, it is. Jung wrote, "There is no birth of consciousness without pain." The Puer has to grieve the death of his idealized self, the version of him that could have been anything, done anything, become anyone. He has to face the brutal reality that potential without action is just elaborate procrastination. This is where Viktor Frankl's insights become crucial. Frankl survived the concentration camps by finding meaning in suffering itself. The Puer's suffering, his depression, his anxiety, his sense of emptiness, isn't a sign that something's wrong with the world. It's his psyche demanding that he finally grow up. But here's what makes this moment so dangerous. He has two choices. He can use this pain as fuel for transformation, finally accepting that becoming a man doesn't mean killing his creativity. It means giving it structure, discipline, and purpose. Or he can retreat deeper into the fantasy, finding new enablers, new excuses, new ways to avoid the fundamental choice that's been waiting for him his entire adult life. Some Puers never make it through this collapse. They become the 50-year-old bartender still talking about his screenplay, the 60-year-old living in his childhood bedroom, bitter at a world that never gave him a chance, the 70-year-old who dies surrounded by unfinished projects and people who stopped believing in him decades ago. But for those who choose differently, who allow the boy to die so the man can be born, something extraordinary happens. They discover that maturity isn't the death of magic. It's magic with direction. It's dreams backed by discipline. It's creativity channeled through commitment. And this leads us to what the integrated man actually looks like. And it's not what you might expect. He still has that spark. He's still creative, still sees possibilities others miss, still has that magnetic energy that draws people in. But now there's something else. Something that makes people not just like him, but trust him, respect him, follow him. He's learned to channel his gifts through structure instead of being destroyed by it. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations about the discipline of desire, how true freedom comes not from having no constraints, but from choosing your constraints consciously. The integrated Puer has finally understood this. He doesn't see commitment as a prison anymore. He sees it as the foundation that makes everything else possible. Watch him now. He still gets excited about new ideas, but he finishes what he starts. He still dreams big, but he breaks those dreams into actionable steps. He still values creativity, but he's learned that creativity without consistency is just expensive therapy. His relationships transform completely. Instead of seeking someone to take care of him, he becomes someone worth being taken care of. Instead of running from intimacy, he creates safety for it. His partner doesn't have to wonder where she stands because he's learned that clarity is kindness and uncertainty is cruelty. Andrew Huberman's research on neuroplasticity shows us that the brain can rewire itself at any age. The former Puer discovers that discipline isn't the enemy of spontaneity. It's what makes spontaneity sustainable. He can be playful because he's handled his responsibilities. He can take risks because he's built a foundation solid enough to support them. At work, he becomes the person others come to for solutions, not excuses. His creativity is now backed by reliability. His vision is supported by execution. He's learned that showing up consistently is more valuable than showing up brilliantly once in a while. But here's what's most remarkable. He's finally present, not lost in fantasies about the future or regrets about the past. He's here now, engaged with his actual life instead of the life he imagines he might live someday. The boy hasn't died. He's finally found a man worthy of guiding him. The dreams haven't disappeared. They've found someone disciplined enough to make them real. And this transformation always comes down to one moment, one choice that changes everything. This transformation always comes down to one moment, one choice that changes everything. And that moment is right now. You feel it, don't you? That tightness in your chest as you recognize yourself in this story. Maybe you're the Puer, finally seeing the prison you've built around your own potential. Maybe you love one, and you're realizing why every conversation feels like walking on eggshells. Either way, something inside you is stirring awake. Here's what I need you to understand. This isn't about becoming some corporate drone who's given up on dreams. This isn't about killing your creativity or your spirit or your sense of wonder. This is about finally giving those gifts a worthy vessel. The man you could become. He still laughs like you do. He still sees magic in unexpected places. He still believes in possibilities others have given up on. But now, he also shows up. He follows through. He builds something real with his hands instead of just talking about it over coffee. Jung said it best. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who you think you should be. Not who others expect you to be. Who you truly are. Which includes both the dreamer and the builder, the visionary and the executor, the boy who imagines and the man who creates. You know what needs to change. You've known for years. That project you keep postponing. That conversation you keep avoiding. That commitment you keep making excuses about. That person who deserves better from you. That life that's been waiting for you to finally show up and claim it. The people who love you. They're not asking you to become someone else. They're asking you to become yourself. Fully. Finally. Without the safety net of eternal potential to hide behind. Life will not wait for you to feel ready. Life will not pause while you figure it out. Life is happening now, while you're deciding whether to participate or keep watching from the sidelines. Every day you choose to stay in the fantasy is a day stolen from the reality you could be building. Every promise you break to yourself makes the next one easier to break. Every time you choose comfort over growth, you're choosing slow death over difficult birth. But here's what I know about you. You wouldn't have watched this far if you were truly content with staying small. Something in you is hungry for more. Something in you is ready to stop preparing to live and finally begin. The question isn't whether you can change. The question is whether you will. This time you decide. So here we are, 8 chapters deep into the mirror you didn't know you needed to look into. If you're feeling that familiar knot in your stomach right now, that mix of recognition and resistance, hope and terror, good. That's not discomfort. That's your soul finally getting permission to tell the truth. Maybe you saw yourself in every chapter. Maybe you saw someone you love. Maybe you saw the man you used to be, or the one you're terrified of becoming. It doesn't matter which. What matters is that you felt something shift while watching this. Because here's what just happened. You didn't just learn about the Puer Aeternus. You experienced the exact moment where knowledge becomes transformation, where understanding becomes choice, where the boy finally looks the man in the eye and decides whether to step aside or keep blocking the door. The integrated man I described in Chapter 7, he's not some fantasy. He's not some impossible standard. He's you. The version of you that's been waiting patiently behind every excuse, every delay, every maybe tomorrow for permission to finally exist. Your creativity doesn't die when you grow up. It gets focused. Your dreams don't disappear when you commit. They get built. Your freedom doesn't end when you choose responsibility. It finally begins. The people in your life who are exhausted by your potential, they're not your enemies. They're your allies, begging you to become the man they can see but you refuse to be. The ones who've given up on you, they're not lost forever, but they're waiting to see proof, not promises. And that proof starts with one decision. One project finished instead of abandoned. One promise kept instead of broken. One day where you show up as the man instead of hiding as the boy. Jung's most brutal truth echoes in my mind as we end this. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But here's what he didn't say. It's also the most liberating. You have everything you need, you always have. The only thing standing between you and the life you actually want is the decision to stop rehearsing and start performing. Comment below. What's the one thing you've been avoiding that you know would change everything if you finally did it? Be honest. Be specific. Let this community witness your commitment. Share this with someone who needs to see it. Not to attack them, but to love them enough to hold up the mirror they've been avoiding. And hit that notification bell. Because we're just getting started. The boy is ready to step aside. The man is ready to be born. The question that remains is simple. Are you ready to let him? Your life is waiting. It's been waiting long enough. This time, choose to begin.